A question about Quinn versus Washington. Tell us how you think the court handled this and Justice Stephens handled that decision, and maybe if you would have ruled differently.
Sure. And so the law always comes down to what 9 lawyers behind chambers agree or disagree on. And so this was an opinion that was 7-2. So let's just say hypothetically that the minority, the 2 justices were the majority, right? And the majority and the dissent indicated that this was income, that capital gains are income. If that were the case, then that would completely destroy the possibility of a state income tax coming down the road later on. So I believe that the fault in the reasoning in Chief Justice's opinion in the capital gains case comes down to both how you look at an excise tax and how you look at a capital gains tax. So when you start with an excise tax, right, you get to tax a transaction, and the legislature has the constitutional authority to tax excise in any way they see, and there's nothing that the courts can do to stop them from doing that. So if it's a transaction, that means it would tax no matter what, anytime there was a sale. But that's not what this does. It taxes the gain. It doesn't tax if it breaks even. It doesn't tax when there's a loss. It taxes that gain. So just on that alone, I think it fails as an excise tax. But if you looked at it, if you look at the capital gain part, right, is the capital gain income? And so anytime that there's a capital gain, that's the same as profit. So imagine like I buy a widget for $2 and I turn around and sell that widget for $3. I have a $1 profit. What the Quinn opinion says is that $1 profit is not income. It's not income. That's what that holding is. How is it that we are going to say that that $1 difference between the purchase price of an asset and the sales price of an asset is not income? So those were 2 issues that I found pretty problematic in the decision, and I support the dissent that was written by Justice Gordon MacLeod, arguing that this was a tax on income, and income is property. So under our state constitution, there's a very clear definition in our state constitution. It's everything subject to ownership, whether intangible or tangible. And they, whoever the people and the legislature who amended the Constitution back in 1930 could have included an exception for income. They didn't do that. So I believe it was incorrectly decided.
I'm going to get to Todd, but just quick follow-up, because one of the things I'm wondering within your answer, you said earlier, this question to me is, I'm trying to ask about judicial restraint and the legislature's role versus the judiciary's role. You said earlier I believe, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but that the Supreme Court has allowed for an environment, perhaps, of too much spending, too much in taxation, etc. Isn't that the legislature's role? And how I guess, what are you arguing with regard to, like, how has the court been involved in that?
Well, you're absolutely correct. It is the job of the legislature to fund the government, however they see fit. The court's sole responsibility is just to ensure that the legislature is acting in a constitutional manner. That's it. And so the capital gains tax, the question is whether that's a tax on property or is it an excise tax? And so it's not an issue of funding the government or increasing taxes or increasing spending. It's about looking at the issue that's directly before you. And when you look at the logic of what an excise tax is and the logic of what a capital gains actually is, and you look at the length of the opinion that was trying to explain these, what I think are just really fundamentally basic concepts, I think that's problematic. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but it's always judicial restraint. You're just you are deciding. Oh, I know what it was. So that was every time. I'm not trying to say that this is outcome based, but and I'll call it a coincidence. But every time there comes an issue of spending or taxes, the result favors more taxes, greater spending, greater sized government. And I'll just tell you, I'll conclude with McCleary is the first example of that. The $30 car tabs is the second example. Capital gains is the third example. And then the referendum on the state income tax that was decided this past May is the fourth example. All pointing, the outcomes point to one direction: greater spending, greater taxes, greater the size of government.
The referendum on the income tax?
Yes.
You mean that the legislature passed?
Yes.
Okay.
No. So yes, the legislature passed a state income tax, but
The decision
but
on necessity clause?
correct.
Okay.
Yes, the referendum by the people. Yes.